The world thought the story had already ended when news outlets calmly reported that Danielle Spencer, the beloved child star of What's Happening, had passed away on a Monday after what was described as a long battle with cancer. Yet what millions believed to be the conclusion of her life has now been shattered by revelations so dark, so heartbreaking, and so catastrophic that the grief of her passing has reignited into fury, disbelief, and global mourning, for behind the headlines that spoke of chemotherapy, resilience, and survival was a truth buried deep inside her bloodstream, a truth that autopsy leaks have now uncovered with devastating clarity. Danielle Spencer did not die of natural illness. She did not succumb to cancer in the way the world was told. She was poisoned, slowly, deliberately, silently, for years, in what forensic experts are now calling one of the most calculated and insidious betrayals imaginable. A crime committed not by distant enemies lurking in shadows, but by those who stood closest to her. People who smiled in her face, posed in photographs, laughed beside her on sets, and whispered words of comfort in her weakest hours, even as they slipped venom into her life drop by drop, ensuring that the actress millions remembered for her innocence and joy was unknowingly fighting a war she could never win. Because the enemy was not fate, it was not disease, it was not destiny. It was betrayal, delivered through poison masked as medicine. Fans around the world are now replaying her interviews in tears, especially one video where Danielle's frail but steady voice whispers words that feel almost prophetic. "I think my medicine is killing me, but no one believes me." A haunting statement that at the time was dismissed as the despair of a woman exhausted by treatments, but now plays like her last desperate cry for help, a cry that millions ignored, that doctors brushed aside, and that friends overlooked, until her autopsy screamed the truth louder than her weakening voice ever could. The shock has sent waves of outrage rippling from New York to Paris, from London to Los Angeles, with candlelight vigils transforming into marches, and marches transforming into protests where fans chant in unison, "Justice for Danielle. She didn't die of cancer, she was murdered." And the phrase has now been painted across walls, etched into hashtags, and burned into the consciousness of millions who grew up watching her smile through television screens. What devastates people most is not just the knowledge that she was poisoned, but the slow realization that she lived the final years of her life believing she was losing a fight against illness, when in reality, she was losing a fight against betrayal, her body collapsing not under the weight of fate, but under the weight of cruelty carefully injected into her veins, and the world is struggling to process the enormity of that deception. For decades, Danielle was the face of childhood joy, the little sister the world adored, the symbol of light who endured a near-fatal car accident in 1977 that left her with lifelong spinal injuries, a tragedy fans thought explained her fragile health in later years. But the autopsy now makes it clear. Her frailty was not the accident's legacy, it was the poisoner's handiwork, and every unexplained ache, every mysterious bout of exhaustion, every tremble in her hands or sudden collapse of energy was not bad luck. It was evidence of a crime unfolding in slow motion before millions of blind eyes. Friends now recall moments when Danielle whispered of feeling like her body was filled with something wrong, of nights where she clutched her stomach in trembling pain, of mornings where she said she felt poisoned inside. Words that seemed melodramatic at the time, but now ring with unbearable clarity, because she was right, she was poisoned, and the world dismissed her warnings as weakness. Medical experts confirmed that the toxins found in her blood were too consistent, too deliberate to be accidental, suggesting a years-long pattern of exposure that points to one conclusion: someone close to Danielle Spencer was executing her slowly, deliberately, and mercilessly. The revelation has not only broken fans, it has broken her colleagues too, with one co-star from What's Happening collapsing upon hearing the leak, sobbing into cameras that he thought they lost her to sickness, but now knows they lost her to cruelty. And that is the kind of pain no apology and no amount of time can heal. As journalists flood airwaves with theories, whispers circulate about jealous colleagues, about personal grudges, about financial disputes. But no matter who is eventually unmasked, the crime is already clear. Danielle Spencer's death was not a twist of fate. It was a slow-motion execution carried out by someone close enough to feed her poison under the guise of care. Her fans now watch old clips differently, no longer seeing just a bright smile. They thought the storm had already passed, that the worst of the grief was behind us, that Danielle Spencer's burial marked the end of her journey. But the truth has only just begun to unravel, exploding through silence like thunder ripping open the night, because the autopsy leak has exposed not just poison in her veins, but patterns so deliberate, so methodical, so undeniable, that investigators now believe this was not simply a matter of murder, but a carefully orchestrated campaign, a silent execution stretched out over years, a betrayal so intimate it forces us to question everything we thought we knew about trust, friendship, and care. Toxicologists confirm that the compounds discovered in Danielle's blood were not random, not accidental, not something you ingest from spoiled food or contaminated water, but rare toxins associated with controlled administration, which means someone, somewhere, close enough to Danielle to reach into her private life, was feeding her slow death under the disguise of medicine, under the mask of love, under the false pretense of care. And when this revelation reached the public, grief erupted into fury. Vigils turned into protests, protests into riots of candles and voices demanding names, demanding justice, demanding that the face of the monster who poisoned their childhood icon be revealed. Social media has become a battlefield of heartbreak and suspicion. Fans replaying old interviews where Danielle looked frail, analyzing photos where her smile seemed weaker, examining red carpet clips where she stumbled, not as innocent moments of exhaustion, but as chilling evidence of a body slowly deteriorating under the weight of deliberate poison. We didn't see it then, but we see it now. One fan wrote under a viral montage of her old clips, the comment collecting millions of likes, millions of broken hearts, millions of voices echoing the same thought, that Danielle Spencer did not die naturally, she was erased. And yet, as investigators dig deeper, the silence from officials has only amplified the suspicion, because statements remain vague, careful, scripted. We cannot confirm or deny the authenticity of the leaks. The investigation is ongoing. But the people are tired of patience, because patience is what cost Danielle her life. Patience is what allowed her suffering to be written off as weakness. Patience is what allowed poison to masquerade as cancer until her final breath, and now patience has been replaced with rage. Fans across Los Angeles are camping outside the coroner's office, chanting through the night, demanding full disclosure, while in New York, candlelight vigils line the steps of television studios, and in London, fans march with placards that read, "Poison is murder" and "Justice for Danielle," the grief transforming into a global movement that has shaken Hollywood to its core. Rumors swirl like wildfire. Some whisper about jealous colleagues, some point to financial disputes hidden from the public eye. Some suggest deeper conspiracies tied to Hollywood's dark underbelly, where silence is currency and betrayal is survival. And the absence of official answers has only allowed these theories to grow louder, darker, and more dangerous. But no matter the theory, one fact remains unshakable. Danielle Spencer was poisoned for years, and whoever did it had access, trust, and proximity, which means the crime was committed not by a stranger in the shadows, but by someone she let into her life, someone she leaned on, someone who smiled to her face while feeding her death. And that realization has broken the world in ways no headline can capture. Imagine living your final years believing your body is betraying you when in reality, someone else is. Imagine whispering, "Why does my body feel poisoned?" as Danielle did, and having those words dismissed as despair when they were the truest cry for help. Imagine dying without knowing that your trust, your love, your circle had been infiltrated by a hand that wanted you gone. This is the weight of Danielle's tragedy, and it is why her fans cannot stop crying, why her colleagues cannot forgive themselves, why her name has now become not just a memory, but a rallying cry. Already, a phrase has begun to spread across murals, across hashtags, across the chants of thousands. She trusted, they poisoned. A haunting summary of a story too cruel for fiction. The investigation now faces immense pressure, with journalists refusing to back down, camping outside police stations, forensic labs, and the homes of Danielle's closest acquaintances, each desperate for a scrap of truth, each ready to ignite the next wave of headlines that could finally put a name to the faceless betrayal. But the most chilling detail of all is the timeline revealed in the autopsy. The poison did not appear suddenly. It was administered gradually over years, which means whoever did this was patient, cold-blooded, methodical, watching Danielle weaken while ensuring she